So thank you all for coming on this holiday week, and happy holiday. And let's hope that we can celebrate it together in a similar way next year and the year after, and all many more to come. So our topic today is new advances in mental health. So as we all know, mental health and physical health are they're not two sides of the same coin, they are the same coin. They are an integral part of each other. So I don't remember what Greek philosopher it was. It said mens sana in corpore sano. It wasn't a Greek, it was Latin. Must have been a Roman. But that means a healthy mind and a healthy body. And so the holistic approach includes physical investigations for imbalances that can be corrected to correct emotional and mental disorders. So we're going to talk about that. About halfway through the talk, around 3 o'clock, we're going to zoom in a therapist from Mexico who is going to be a collaborator of mine. And she's going to talk to you for about half an hour about what she does, which is quite special and I find extremely exciting. And then we'll talk some more. So I'll just kind of paint the broad brush picture as I like to do, and start with, we look at underlying causes.
Sorry, Emily.
No problem, please have a seat, down in front. No, you have to sit in front because you're really,
That's okay. Come in front.
so we don't just look for drugs to mask symptoms. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record for those of you who've been here before, but that's how it is. There's always a reason for things going wrong. The body doesn't suddenly explode and go haywire. It takes some work to make you sick. And so putting a Band-Aid over the check engine light is not the answer. The answer is open the hood and see what the problem is, correct the problem, and the symptoms go away. And you don't get worse. So when we choose to ignore underlying problems, they do get worse. And so the accumulation of medications is rarely the answer. So here we're going to talk about the underlying causes. So as usual, we talk about nutrition, which is a huge part of our lives. Nothing is taught in medical school about nutrition, I mean zero. And can you imagine that? We gloss over what normal physiology is for the first year of medical school, and we never go back to it. After that, it's all illness and finding names for that illness, which would cause making a diagnosis. And then we go to the list of drugs. And that's what medicine has become today. So sadly, that's not good medicine. So then also movement and the lack thereof is a problem in our culture, a huge problem. And so, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Accumulated toxicities. Over time, toxins that our body was never designed to handle, industrial waste and heavy metals and other things that so we don't know what to do with them. So in many cases, we just push them into storage in different parts of the body. And so we get sicker and sicker and we don't know why. Then there are infections that can be a chronic problem. Isolation, in the sense of mental health, loneliness is now thought to be the underlying cause of a lot of it. And then unresolved trauma. So unresolved trauma becomes like a Pandora's box. And you remember what happened with her. She wouldn't open the box, until finally she opened the box and all these horrible things came flying out. And she was terrified. And when they finished coming out, there was one thing left in the box, and that was hope. And so we need to open our Pandora's box, because many of us are sick because we're sitting on things that happened to us in childhood that we may not even remember. And so that's the goal of a lot of therapy. So this is what we're going for today. So let's see what happens. Okay, so as far as nutrition, the standard American diet is a carefully designed cause of chronic illness. And the reason is that our diet has been engineered to taste delicious to us and to be addictive, and also to have very little nutrition, because over-processed foods are just that. They are sweet or salty, or they have flavors that really hook us and our children, of course. And and yet they have plenty of calories with no nutrition. The vitamins and the minerals have been stripped out, and there's nothing left but unhealthy substances. I mean, how can a Twinkie sit on a shelf for 2 years and not get moldy? What is that? Is that food? I don't think so. Even the mold doesn't think so. But it tastes great. So I used to eat Twinkies a long time ago, but I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole right now. So I breeze through. I don't even go down the aisles in the supermarket anymore. There's no food there. If you need soap for your dishwasher, it's fine, or toilet paper. But please don't look for food on those shelves. It isn't there. The food, if there is any, is on the perimeter of the store. And you'll recognize it because it looks like food. And you have to cook it, you have to chop it up, you have to do something to it to make it palatable or edible, or, I mean, the dogs eat raw meat, they love it, but I prefer to have it cooked. So at any rate, enough about that. So why else? Because we grow food in monocultures. So monoculture means that there are 10,000 acres of one kind of corn next to 10,000 acres of soybeans or something else. And that's not how nature works. Think of a forest. Think of the abundance of diversity in a forest or in a grassland, and the animals that live there and fertilize it and eat those plants. So monoculture is inherently an aberrant way to create food. And yes, it may be true that we have an overpopulation. We need to grow food more efficiently. But if we're growing food that doesn't nourish, it's not worth it. Let's try going back to regenerating the soil, making the soil healthy again, and then growing crops in rotation, or the regenerative way. So if you want to know more about that, there's a whole movement called regenerative farming. And if you can find a farmer who does that, please support that, because you will be getting the finest food that you can in this country. And who was it? Rudolf Steiner was the philosopher who invented that term, and who showed us that regenerating the soil keeps us all healthy. So poor soil from absent soil bacteria, from used up nutrients, so there's no more iodine in the soil. And those of you who've heard me talk before know that I'm a broken record on iodine, because it will prevent breast cancer, prostate cancer, keep your thyroid healthy, keep your hormone receptors working, and there just isn't any in our diet unless you eat seaweed and shellfish, which may still contain some, but can also contain a lot of toxicity. So at this point in time, it's best to get your iodine from a health food store and just take it every day.
Every day?
Every
Not
day.
3 times a week?
You know, if you're just starting, every day is a good idea. Because you have to flush out the fluorine and the bromine from your body that's been accumulating there. If you've been on it for a while, 3 days a week is plenty.
In what form does iodine come?
They sell it in liquid called Lugol solution or in capsules. One of the brands I like is Ioderol. Anything that has iodine plus iodide, which is the potassium salt of iodine. So both forms are important. And I put a few drops in the dog water also, because they're not
And how
getting.
much should we be taking every day?
It's not about dosing, because your kidneys will get rid of extra. It's really about just consistency.
So whatever it's suggested use on
Yes,
the
that's
bottle?
what I would
Okay.
do. So the pills actually are pretty high dose, but they will drive out the plenty of fluoride that's in your body from drinking the water and bathing in it, and the bromine that's in all our baked goods. They used to use iodine, but they stopped for who knows what reason. And bromine is toxic and fluorine is toxic. So we want to be careful that we're protecting ourselves. And then the way they treat those animals is shocking and disgraceful. They're full of stress hormones and it's on our karma if we're supporting that industry. So again, regenerative farming, the grass-fed cattle that certain farmers are growing here, it's worth the extra money. It really has far more nutrition, and you don't have to be, to stay awake at night thinking about the lives of those poor animals. By the way, I have 7 chickens at home. They're not laying yet, but they will in about 3 months, I'm told. So there'll be plenty of fresh, pasture-raised, healthy eggs to go around. So I'll bring some in one of these days. So we feed those animals antibiotics because they're stuck together so closely that diseases would be rampant among them. And so we're getting a dose of antibiotic when we're eating those animals. So anyway, I don't want to go into this so much. That's not the topic of our talk, but basically that's part of the problem with mental health, and especially in the kids. So when I get a young person whose main complaint is anxiety or depression, the first thing I'll do is ask what they eat. And 10 to 1, they're eating like all their friends. They're eating chips and they're eating, burgers, and they're eating highly processed everything. They're eating out of boxes and cans and bags and things that really aren't real food. So we have to encourage them to start eating food. And lo and behold, they get better. So that's number 1. Okay, so this painting, I brought the complete version because it cut off on the picture, is my belief that there really is magic in this world. And if we don't respect it, we're missing something. So here's, whoops, what did I do? Same thing. So this lady is called Alchemy, and she's doing all kinds of magical transformations. She's got a pot of gold that she has transformed from lead, and she's dropping stones into it that are then coming up in smoke and coalescing into butterflies, another symbol of transformation. And of course the mushrooms on the ground are transformative mushrooms. And her son, Chemistry, who's living across the abyss, has his back to her. He's ignoring everything that she knows and just playing with his blocks, which represent, of course, the table of the elements. So I like to do paintings that make you think. So that's one of them. And it relates to today's message, because we can't just think chemistry when we're talking about mental health. We have to think about physics, which means energy. We have to think about interpersonal relations. We have to think about the culture and what direction the culture is pushing individuals. So it becomes very magical. So as far as nutrition, the magic is found in orthomolecular medicine. And orthomolecular medicine was invented by Abraham Hoffer, who found that high doses of thiamine were extremely helpful for psychosis. And yet that's not in the medical literature anymore, and nobody remembers that, but it's still true. So you can find books by him, and if you look up orthomolecular medicine, there's a lot of information there. So some of you may remember Bill W. was the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, and when he wrote his book, he included niacin for addictions. It's extremely helpful in getting over addictions. It creates energy in the body through NAD. Some of you may have heard of that. And you can still use niacin in low doses or niacinamide to boost your energy. So orthomolecular medicine uses vitamins and nutrients instead of drugs. So what's wrong with that? I consider that pretty magical. We all know that vitamin D, if it's too low, will cause that seasonal affective disorder. I remember that when I was up in Boston in November one year, and I was just feeling really down. I couldn't put my finger on it. And I'd lived in Boston for years, and I never felt that way, but I did then, coming from Florida, and I realized that it was noon, and the shadows on the ground were 10 miles long, and the sun was only, a few inches off the horizon. And so I thought, that's what I'm missing. I'm missing my sunshine. I'm missing my vitamin D. So we have learned that, and now we put people under a sun lamp, or we feed them extra vitamin D. By the way, the ideal dose, not the what they call the normal dose, is between 50 and 80 nanograms per ml. So a regular doctor may test your vitamin D and tell you that it's normal if it's 32. It's not ideal though. It may be in their range because of so many people that they test have low vitamin D, so their range is way too broad. Vitamin D is hugely important for your immune system and for your mental health. So
Did you say between 30 and 50?
no, it's 50 to 80.
50 to 80.
The range of normal on Quest Labs is 30 to 100, I think. So you don't want to be too far over, you don't want to be too far under. It's all about making Goldilocks happy, right? So then I found a nice paper on the balance between omega-3s and omega-6 fatty acids and ADD and autism and depression and anxiety and all of these things. So omega-3s should be more abundant in our diet, and they come from healthy fats like fish, like olive oil, like avocado, like nuts. And the omega-6s are the seed oils that are so abundant: cottonseed, soy, corn oil, the cheap oils that are used everywhere and in everything. So all of your chips and all of your popcorn and all of your restaurant food is cooked in seed oils. So please, if you're not eating fish frequently, or you're not paying attention to the fats that you're getting, take some fish oil in capsules every day. Your brain will thank you. All right, we won't do any more of that. And then lithium is a nutrient. We'll see this again in further slides because I really love lithium. What they discovered that in cities where the lithium content in the water was present, there was a lower suicide rate and a lower crime rate. Where there was no lithium, the murder rate was higher and the suicide rate was higher as well. So lithium should be part of your supplement program. And don't ask me where to get it in food, I have no idea. Lithium is element number 3 on the periodic table. It's really pretty simple. Anyway, it's the dosing would be anywhere between 4 to 20 milligrams. And I wouldn't take it every day. I don't take many things every day. I try to get my nutrition from my food. So you might ask your county if there's lithium in the water, and then you don't have to worry about it. Or suggest that they take the fluoride out and put some lithium in, but that would be too much like rice, so not likely to do it. Okay, so then movement, my God. People think that the body was designed to cart the brain from the house to the office and nothing more. Whereas it's really designed to give you joy. If you don't move your body, it's going to make you sad. If you do move your body joyously, you'll be happy. So I tell my patients, turn on the music and dance in the kitchen, in your bedroom. You don't need a partner. Close the blinds so the neighbors don't think you're crazy. If you have a partner, so much the better. Teach him how to dance. Or put him over there and you dance your little dance and he'll dance his. But I mean, to me, dancing was the most joyous thing in the world. And for other people, just taking a walk can boost your spirits. So when we move, we make those wonderful chemicals called endorphins. So endorphins are morphine, nature's morphine. So you think nature wants us addicted, right? She does. So when you get over the hump, the first 6 weeks of thinking, oh my God, I have to do this again today, go to the gym or take a walk or, swim or whatever your chosen movement is, you get over those 6 weeks and then you start reaping the benefit. You're going to feel so good after your workout. So endorphins that are made in your body are not illegal. And they won't kill you. There is no way to overdose. You can overdose on exercise, but I promise you none of us in this room ever will. So if you don't exercise, you're going to put all your energy into making fat. And fat causes inflammation. It stores toxins. And then when you do move, or even overnight, when you're burning a little fat, you're going to be liberating toxins. So you want more muscle than fat. Fat is important, and if you're eating good, healthy fats, and you're careful not to, swallow too many microplastics, and make sure you're eating organic produce, or at least washing your produce, you'll be less toxified. Anyway, movement is important. Yeah, so living in your head, men do this a lot more than women do, because we're trained throughout our reproductive lives to pay attention to the signals from our bodies. Otherwise, you're going to disgrace yourself every month. You have to know when your period's about to happen. So we do listen better to our bodies. But men kind of get training that forces them more into their heads and less in their bodies. And that's not so much true of athletes, although even athletes are trained to ignore pain. And pain is an important signal. So one of the best meditations that you can do is just drop your consciousness into your body and check it out. Just move like a CAT scanner. from your toes on up and check in and see what your organs are saying to you. You know, do you have back pain today? Is your kidney trying to get your attention? Is your liver inflamed? You know, did you eat something bad yesterday? Anyway, check in and learn the skill of listening to your body. Okay, so here are some toxins. Heavy metals, of course, lead will ding your brain big time, so will mercury, and make you very unhappy and even psychotic. So we know once upon a time they used to be used as medicines. So they did find an authenticated lock of Beethoven's hair, and he died young of mercury poisoning from his doctors because they thought that that was a good thing to do at the time. And others of our famous people, I think Andrew Jackson, died of lead poisoning and so on and so forth. But today there's no reason except the fact that there are toxins in places that you don't know about. So for mercury, it's fish and fillings. So the bigger fish concentrate the mercury from the tiny fish in their bodies, and you get a bigger dose with tuna than you do with sardines. So choose wisely. And don't eat. I have a lady now who was eating tuna 3 days a week, and now she can't think straight. So we're working on her slowly to get the mercury out. And fillings, if you have any, need to be removed by a dentist who knows the right protocol, so you won't get extra doses, and neither will the dentist and his staff. So it's important to seek out the right practitioners. Anyway, glyphosate is thought to be a factor in autism and ADD because it mimics a brain nutrient called glutamate, and it stimulates the brain. Overstimulates the brain in kids who are eating a lot of Roundup-drenched foods. So again, we can neutralize it somewhat, but it's best to get it out of their diet, feed them organic whole foods, and give them glycine, which will help restore proper brain function. So glycine is the antidote for glyphosate. So then hormone imbalances, as many of us know, can cause temporary psychosis at puberty, at menopause, at andropause, and for the years after, because the brain is a hormone-dependent organ. So it works best when it's swimming in a sea of balanced hormones, natural hormones, not fake hormones that some scientists invented. I'm thinking of birth control pills, and I'm thinking of progestins, which are not natural progesterone, which increase your risk of cancer, and which don't work to stabilize the mood that natural progesterone does. And roid rage, you've probably heard of, those guys that take too much testosterone and carry guns in their, like all good Floridians, in their glove box, and somebody stops too fast in front of them and they jump out, and you know the rest. It's not funny, but sadly, there can be serious medical reasons why people go nuts. And that's one of them. Obviously, alcohol is a brain toxin, and there is a syndrome in alcoholics called Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome, which is actually a vitamin deficiency. So when somebody would come into the emergency room in delirium tremens, we would give them IV thiamine, vitamin B1. That's orthomolecular medicine, and nothing else works. So you give the brain what it needs and things do get better. And then many medications are toxic to the brain. So there's a book out by Dwayne Graveline, who was a doctor in NASA for a long time, and then his doctor put him on statins, as many doctors are very eager to do if you're 1 point above their threshold on your cholesterol. And a few days later, he found himself wandering around the street, not knowing his own name or where he lived. And he couldn't understand it, but it happened again. He went off statins for a while, and then he went back on, and it happened again. So he wrote a book called The War on Cholesterol, The Misguided War on Cholesterol. If you have a heart history in your family or in your personal history, and you do have high cholesterol, and you want to work on that, niacinamide is your drug of choice for many reasons. It upregulates your metabolism, and it lowers your cholesterol. So why take a chance on global amnesia when you can just take a natural natural vitamin in high doses and resolve the problem.
What would the dosage be for niacin?
500 milligrams twice a day would be a good start.
Did you say once a day?
Twice.
Twice a day.
And then you check again, and if your cholesterol is down to 170, then probably once a day would be enough too. You're just trying to please your cardiologist. There really is little to no risk of so-called elevated cholesterol. It's really the inflammation that gets you. Cholesterol is the Band-Aid. If you don't have a wound, you're not going to be building up plaque. If your arteries are not inflamed, you don't lay down cholesterol. So we talked about that in February, but it's worth going over again, because just adding drugs to treat a number on a page is very short-sighted and usually results in some unforeseen side effects, because most doctors won't remind you to take CoQ10. Your CoQ10 is part of your energy factory generation. And if you're not making cholesterol because of the statin, you're also not making CoQ10. So you must take it as a supplement. But that isn't true of niacin.
So CoQ10, how much did you take it? I take it twice a day, once with breakfast, once with dinner.
But you're taking plenty.
What's the dosage though on that?
Well, I'm guessing, but I would say 200. So it's between 100 and 300. But if you're taking it at all, you're better off than the guy next to you who's not taking any and never was told. So the other thing that gets me is that when surgeons take out some hapless lady's gallbladder, they never tell her you have to take bile every time you eat for the rest of your life. So I don't know how many people that applies to in this room, but you may know someone who had their gallbladder removed and they were never the same since, because they can't absorb fats without bile. And when you take the gallbladder, the bile is not sitting there waiting for the next meal and squeeze in and mix with the meal. It's just dripping into your gut all day long. So that doesn't work very well. So they sell ox bile in the health food store for next to no money. And if you take one of those with your meal, you're going to help your body absorb fats, and that's super important.
And could you still take that if you still have your gallbladder, just
Sure,
to help
why not?
absorb?
Yeah, if you think your gallbladder's not working properly.
Or to help it as we get older? No, it
Maybe, I
doesn't.
don't know. I mean, I don't know how to measure that, but
Right.
it's
It
one
can't
of those
hurt.
things that
It
can't
wouldn't
hurt.
hurt. Right.
As long as, take it with the meal.
Right.
So bile surrounds fat, because fat and water don't mix. And your blood is a water medium. So the bile surrounds the fat and makes it into something that can travel in your bloodstream
Right.
and not just stick to the walls of your arteries. It's a very cleverly designed machine,
Right.
this body. And there's so much we don't know about it.
And what is Dwayne's last name, the book? that-
GRAV,
G-
grave, line, LINE,
And the book is The Misguided,
War on Cholesterol.
thank you.
Keep my eye on, oh, we've got 15 minutes, so we're gonna go quick. So infections can cause brain inflammation. So all of these things can be implicated. Chronic infections, some of the worst. And it doesn't affect everyone, but it affects a lot of people, and they don't know why they're depressed. So maybe they have mold. Mold is toxic to the brain and other organs. And if you've got mold in your house, please take care of it. Dysbiosis of the gut is an imbalance of good guys and bad guys. Too many bad guys and not enough good guys. And that's usually because of your dietary choices or the antibiotics you've been taking or or certain toxins that you may be taking. So glyphosate will ding your good bacteria in the guts, and another reason to eat organic. Okay, so then it can create a leaky brain. So you've heard of leaky gut. When foods, undigested food particles can pass through and create food sensitivities. Well, you can also get a leaky blood-brain barrier, in which case you're going to have emotional and cognitive symptoms. So it's not because you're, 80 years old. It may be because you have all these correctable causes. So a holistic doctor will look at the causes and try to fix them before warehousing you in a nursing home. Okay, so then we're getting into other things. So lifestyle factors in mental health issues. Sleep is huge. You've got to get a good night's sleep or your brain won't work. The brain cleans itself out overnight, and there are many sleep tracker devices out there. I see many of you are wearing Apple Watches. You can use that to give you a report card in the morning on how good was your sleep. So what are the parameters? And this is an Oura Ring that does all the same thing. Garmin watches, Fitbits also do that. And I think they're worth the investment, because you'll find out that that glass of wine at night is not your friend. It's going to ding your deep sleep. The hit on the joint will do the same. So in some respects, marijuana is helpful, in other respects, it's not. So you can see what affects your sleep. You can change things and get that report card the next day. So you need deep sleep, which happens early in the evening. So if you're a night owl and you're going to bed at 1 o'clock, you're probably not getting much deep sleep at all. The REM sleep, the dream sleep, happens later and before you wake up, so in the second part of the night, for the most part. And you need, I'm hesitant to say a number, but I aim for at least an hour of each. So an hour of deep sleep and an hour of REM, I know I've had a good night's sleep. And even if I've gotten up to pee 3 times or 4 times, if I can go right back to sleep, that's okay. And then you check if you feel rested in the morning. So your body will tell you how it feels. If you have to crawl to your coffee pot and you can't open your eyes until you've had your 2 cups of caffeine, you're not getting good sleep. So this is one of the major causes of dementia. So please, people, check your sleep and fix it. So there are lots of books out now, lots of self-help, lots of noises you can put on at night to help you get into sleep faster. Hormones are also important for proper sleep. So all of these things work together. So then we mentioned loneliness, and that has become 100 times worse since the pandemic. And loneliness and lack of social contact may be the reason for all these young men going crazy and shooting people, because they feel worthless, and if they're gonna die, they're gonna take out half the town along with them. So these are serious mental health disorders, and they may be findable and correctable in advance, but only if we're looking. So for us, who are most of us are retired, present company accepted, of course. Find your tribe and find people that you would never talk to and talk to them, and just, try to be the first one to open a conversation, because that person may be suffering and they may not have the wherewithal to have a conversation or to be the first. So, try it, you might like it. Be friendlier and be more open to people that may actually be needing that at this very moment. So lack of self-regulation, what is that? Well, that is the American way, I would say, that we never learn to control ourselves. We don't teach that to our kids. We don't learn it ourselves. Control is a matter of not listening to your animal instincts right off the bat, not letting that button be pushed, not going for the weapon immediately, but being able to stop, drop, and think before you open your mouth or before you hit someone. So that is not a skill that we're born with. We have to learn self-control. And probably the premier way to learn it is through meditation. So meditation isn't easy. And I've heard so many people say, oh, I tried meditation, but I can't do it. Well, could you draw before you learned how? Could you write? Could you read? Could you do any fundamental things that are skills, that are learned skills? It really takes just daily application, and it's free. So why not do it? It's free, it's simple, there's nothing simpler in the world and nothing harder. So the meditation I was taught when I started was the body scan that I alluded to before. You quiet yourself, you breathe deep a couple of times, you put your consciousness in your toes, and you move up your body and you check in. How are my knees feeling today? How's my backside? How's my back? How's my front? How's my heart? Is my heart heavy today, or is it full? Is it empty? Is it sad? What am I feeling? Just check in, no judgment. And that's a great meditation to do before you go to sleep at night. And then you can learn to listen to your body. If your body wants immediate action and is just triggered by something that somebody just said, that's the time to use that skill. So that's what I call self-regulation. It's to disable your buttons and think before you speak. So I commend you to that. So autonomic dysregulation. So what does that mean? So the autonomic nervous system is your fight or flight, your sympathetic nervous system, your parasympathetic, which is your quiet and digest and sleep system. So it's always a balance. We need both, but so many people live in that always turned on state. They're fast talkers and fast walkers, and they drive fast and they don't sleep because sleep is a waste of time, and they eat standing up or running or in the car, and they don't learn how to quiet themselves. So meditation is a good way to learn that, for sure. But simply taking the time to eat mindfully to think about the food while you're chewing it, to be grateful, to be in that heart space, and to just let the world go for a few minutes. It's, it's so beneficial for us. So then how much of that mental health stuff is due to traumas that we don't even remember, and that Pandora's box issue? So let's not leave things unprocessed. And if you've been married 3 times and you always get the same guy over and over again, maybe it's not the guy, maybe it's you. Maybe you should look into your psyche and what is generating this repeat mistake over and over again. And then, chronic illness of all kinds is due to lifestyle. So that's what we've been talking about. Okay, so conventional treatments, because I have 5 minutes before we zoom in our next speaker, are these drugs, basically. So the serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors will work on your serotonin system. That's your Paxil and Zoloft and those things. And they basically make you numb. And going through life numb is not ideal, but it's better than suffering or being suicidal. So it may be a step in the right direction. But no, don't make it the only step or the last step, please. Anti-anxiety meds will shrink your brain over time, and they are very addictive. So please, if you're on them, find some way to get off them, but work with somebody because they are highly addictive. Antipsychotics, well, that's a whole other story. Talk therapy can be extremely effective if you're willing to open that box and let the demons out. And then you find the demons are gone and they're not torturing you anymore. And you have hope at the end. Lithium. So lithium, we talked about low-dose lithium. Pharma has created pharmaceutical dose lithium. Remember I said between 4 and 20 milligrams? Well, they have people taking it 300 milligrams 3 times a day. And that can have disastrous side effects, especially for the thyroid. So that isn't a good idea, but low dose might be, and you can get it in the health food store. Naltrexone works on the opioid receptors and is the way we rescue opioid overdoses. But low-dose naltrexone is a terrific adjunct to chronic illness like chronic pain. It can be extremely helpful for autoimmune disorders and for brain disorders as well. It's always worth a try, but to find a practitioner who knows how to use it is the trick here. And then electroconvulsive therapy, they're doing it again. So it's like, the electric chair, but just short of death. And it just shocks the whole brain and hopes for the best. So we have more targeted therapies now. So we talked about sleep hygiene, self-regulation, hormone balancing, talk therapy. Okay, so now we get to the good stuff at the bottom. So medical marijuana. One of the indications that the state of Florida allows me to recommend marijuana for my patients is PTSD. So who doesn't have PTSD? We all do. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Everybody's had stress and trauma in their lives. So medical marijuana is very safe. Nobody dies. It's now even safer because you know what you're getting. You're not buying it from the guy on the corner. And you're buying it from a licensed dispensary. It can really help with sleep. It can help with anxiety tremendously. I don't think it's the end of the story. I think you still have to open the box. But it can be immensely helpful to uplift your mood or to calm you down and to get you through the night. So I do believe in medical marijuana and have been a practitioner since they legalized it, and a user way before that. Full disclosure, it's one of my plant allies. So there's also now a technique called transcranial magnetic stimulation that they use for depression, which targets an area of the brain and shoots magnetic waves in there. And it's just like an MRI, it's click, 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 very loud, but it doesn't hurt, and it works. So they do that. There's a place called Brainwave Center here in Sarasota where they do TMS, it's called. And I would recommend it for getting off SSRIs for anyone who's really depressed. Okay, so now I'm going to let you in on the big reveal here. So as far as I'm concerned, the biggest breakthrough in mental illness is psychedelic therapy. And again, I've had not an intimate, but a passing relationship with psychedelics since I was at Harvard in the 60s when Timothy Leary was there and they were passing out LSD. We're in class. Everybody was doing it, and it was profound. It was profound. It's not something you want to do often. It's something you might do 2 or 3 times in your life, but it opens your mind and it shows you the world in a very different light. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'll tell you stories afterwards. But we're going to zoom in now with a young lady named Lauren Rice. And Lauren Rice is a psychotherapist who has set up her retreat center in Mexico, because in Mexico she can use psilocybin, which is from the mushrooms, and MDMA, which is ecstasy, legally, where you cannot use them here yet. I'm hoping we'll see that change. But she's going to talk about what she does and how she does it and why she does it. And then after she's finished, I'll come back and answer your questions and tell you some stories.
Tonight we're going to take a few minutes and talk to you about the really amazing alternative treatments that are supporting
Slightly louder?
having healthy neurological systems, brain health, their longevity, and also healing just on all levels, emotionally, psychologically, physically. We're having amazing results working with psychedelics, and a lot of people might be talking about psychedelics. You might hear about them in the news or read about them in an article, or know somebody who might be talking about these tools or working with these tools. And so really the session is to answer some basic questions and to just educate, like, what is psychedelic therapy? What are some of the tools? Is it safe? Is it legal? And just kind of give you a general overview. So the first thing that I want to say is that no matter what you choose, whether you choose to work with pharmaceuticals to support having healthier body, lowering cholesterol or blood pressure, whether you take tea or herbs to help you sleep, no particular substance, whether it is natural or whether it's synthetic, whether your doctor prescribes it to you or whether you decide to take it, is perfectly safe and effective for every person, right? Everybody's body is unique. And so it's important to work with a practitioner, a doctor, with somebody who has experience that can kind of help guide you to know what things might be good for you. So you might listen to this and you might think, wow, some of the stuff she's talking about sounds great. I'm curious, I want to learn more. That's fantastic. And you also might listen and think, yeah, this isn't for me, and that's totally fine too, right? So there's no one thing.
Recording in progress.
So, probably one of the more well understood reasons or popular trends in psychedelic medicine, where really people come to work with psychedelics is to treat what we call trauma or PTSD. So people who've experienced challenging situations, like emotionally or psychologically, who may want to help their bodies to feel better. And sometimes the ways that you know that you might be struggling with a traumatic response or even with a chronic stress response, which is also traumatic on the body, are that you might have trouble sleeping, you might have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, you may have kind of ruminating thoughts, anxiety or depression that may or may not be diagnosed. You may have trouble feeling safe and comfortable relating to other people. And you may also have other types of body symptoms, right? Like unexplained chronic pain, patterns of inflammation that don't seem to shift, like no matter what you do, what you take, what you eat, what you don't eat, and things like that. And sometimes when we get to a point where we feel like we've been struggling with symptoms, even physical symptoms, it can be important to maybe consider that part of what's going on is that our nervous system is under a burden of stress and tension. And that burden of stress and tension is actually creating other physical symptoms in the body and making us have trouble with our sleep or have trouble with being able to feel relaxed or feel a sense of joy or what have you. And so I just kind of want to begin the talk by prefacing that we all go through challenging experiences, and there may not even be one particular really challenging event or series of events. You know, you may not have served in a combat situation, you may not have had a chronic illness, you may not have gone through financial challenges or had a very stressful job. Sometimes just the everyday stuff of life builds up over time, and if we don't have good support networks and we don't always have all of our needs met, that can be really taxing on the body, and it can force us to push ourselves and work really hard in the body to produce more chemicals when we're under a state of stress that can actually cause an inflammatory and a chronic traumatized state in the body. So we all can experience that. And different tools, different psychedelic tools can help us to heal and address those things. So what are psychedelics? So the word psychedelic actually comes from Greek. Psyche, we think means mind, but to the Greeks it actually meant soul, heart, kind of this consciousness in a broader sense. And delic comes from delos, which is change or transformation. So psychedelic are substances, and they can be man-made, and they can also be from things that are created in nature. They can be from fungi, from mushrooms, from other plants that grow all over the world. And the key kind of unique factor with psychedelics is that they can cause a change in our consciousness. They can alter our perception, the way we sense time, the way we feel our bodies, sometimes the things that we see, feel, and hear. And they can do that in varying degrees and in varying dosages. And when used safely with a trained practitioner, they can be some of the best treatments we have for treating trauma and PTSD, for supporting the balance of depression and anxiety, also for supporting people healing from it. And they don't seem related to necessarily like an emotional or psychological cause, but they can be. And so within the United States, there's kind of a big debate that's happening right now. Are psychedelics safe, right? Should people use them or not? Certain psychedelics have been really maligned in the media, things like LSD, psilocybin mushrooms or magic mushrooms. Those are terms you may have heard, right? Even cannabis or marijuana, weed, these substances all have psychedelic properties, and there's differing levels of legality with them in different parts of the world. In the United States right now, the only legal psychedelic is like the legal in all 50 states because it is a controlled substance and certain doctors can prescribe it, is a medicine called ketamine. And some of you may know what ketamine is. In larger doses, it's used as a tranquilizer in veterinary context, so like for larger animals. But ketamine was actually developed almost 100 years ago, and it was used as an anesthetic. So, excuse me, I'm traveling at altitude and it's giving me this little thing on my throat. So ketamine was used as an anesthetic, a battlefield anesthetic during the Second World War. And in high doses, We can actually use it as an anesthesia, and we can put people into twilight sedation. But in smaller doses, right, in more mild doses, when ketamine is administered, it can help people move into a hypnotic state. Some people liken it to a meditative state or to what we call a mild dissociative state. And so it helps the body feel relaxed, and it can actually help be an amazing tool for us to trigger a deep relaxation response in the nervous system. And it can help us pair with the right therapeutic tools to give the body what it needs to release long-standing patterns of tension, to feel more joy and connectivity in our lives and relationships. It essentially can help us reset the nervous system. So if you've ever had like a technological device, like a phone or a computer, and it's just not working, sometimes you just kind of gotta like shut it off, unplug it, reset the thing. Our nervous system's work like that too. And certain psychedelics can actually help us to perform that hard system reset. So ketamine is one of my favorite tools for doing that. You can also work with psilocybin mushrooms, which have limited legality in the United States. We see legality in Oregon, in some ways in Colorado, and then also in Washington D.C. where they're decriminalized. So we're starting to see access to other psychedelic tools, which they all can work differently, but they can have the same end when used safely with a trained practitioner, which is to help reset the nervous system response. They can trigger changes in our neurological system and cause our brains to release different chemicals, kind of like growth hormone in the brain, that can open these windows of critical learning periods. So if any of you have children, or maybe if you have grandchildren or are around young children, and you've ever noticed like kids under 5, they're like little sponges. They learn so quickly. They can go from crawling to walking to running in like a really short period of time, right? Their window of learning is really open. They learn language really quickly, and they learn by example. And so that's because children and babies, they don't have a lot of advantages, right? They're not strong, they're not older, they don't have the same brain capacity that adults do. So their way that they're successful in life is that they can learn fast, right? That's like an evolutionary advantage that we have when we're small to help protect us so that we can grow. And so adults can actually reopen that critical learning window. It's not that you'll regress and become like a small child, it's that your brain can all of a sudden be open to learning new things, to taking in new information, and doing that more quickly and more easily. So why might that help? If you have a chronic illness pattern, or if you're stuck in a pattern, so for instance, with an unhealthy substance that maybe you or somebody you know struggles with alcohol consumption, or struggles with certain medication, right? Like medications that they were prescribed that maybe were helping them manage their stress or their anxiety or their sleep or their pain, and they maybe want to come off of those medications or reduce their dose of those medications, but it's really challenging because your body has now developed a physical relationship, like a dependency relationship. Ketamine in particular, as well as other psychedelics, can really, really help that person to rewire some of their neural circuitry around working with those medications, so that they can taper down or change their dose into a dose that's more reflective of where they want to be health-wise in their choices, right? And or the same with alcohol consumption, or cigarette smoking, or cannabis use, or any substance that you may want to adjust your relationship with. So that's a great example of how it can help us to learn new healthy habits. But we can also be stuck in negative thought patterns, right? Loneliness, anxiety. We could have gone through a grief experience, right? A deep personal loss, someone that was very close to us, a partner, a child, a parent, a close friend or family member, and moving through that grief experience can be really challenging. And psychedelics can be an amazing tool, not to take away or erase the pain, but to help us process, to help us kind of more self-lovingly move through that grief experience when paired with proper therapy. So what I'm trying to do here is sort of paint a very general picture, assuming that some of you listening may not know or heard anything about any of these topics that I'm talking about before. I'm just getting like a really general overview, and to say, that working with psychedelic medicines, in particular tools like ketamine, can be really safe and they can be really helpful for a lot of different things because they can help us to learn new patterns and to move through a healing journey in a way that is a little bit more compassionate and safe for us in the process. So kind of just giving that general overview, maybe, and if any of you have some questions, you can hold them to the end. We'll leave a little bit of space for questions in just a few minutes. But one of the other things that I want to share specifically is about ketamine and how it is administered. So you might be asking, hey, like the ketamine thing, like I'm interested in this, how can I take it, what can I do? There's a couple of different ways. You may be able to go and have ketamine in a retreat style setting. So a practitioner like myself will come with a doctor, like Dr. Roberts, or someone who's licensed to administer the ketamine, because ketamine can be given intravenously, so it can be put into an IV bag, kind of like a hydration or a vitamin IV, and that can be put into your bloodstream that way. And it can also be given with a small injection into the deltoid muscle, into your shoulder. They're very tiny, doesn't hurt. And the advantage of giving ketamine that way is that your body doesn't absorb ketamine very well when you take it orally, when you take it in your mouth, right? And so putting it in intravenous or directly into the bloodstream helps us use the doses that are more appropriate for you and get accurate dosing, and you get to absorb a lot of it. And then the other way is that you can actually keep it in a lozenge or in a nasal spray where you'll inhale the ketamine, like an allergy nasal spray, or a lozenge that will go under your tongue. And then you'll absorb it through your mucous membranes in your mouth. So maybe you've taken like a B12 or had a throat lozenge, like to absorb something through your mouth without, it's not the same as swallowing it. So there's actually many different what we call routes of administration or ways to take ketamine. And so depending on who you are and what other things might be going on in your body, there's always a safe and effective way that different kinds of patients can consume ketamine. And I actually think working with low doses of ketamine can be really therapeutically effective. So it doesn't have to be something that's scary. It can be something that actually feels very comfortable and very safe. And so when people experience ketamine, so you can either have it in a retreat style setting where there might be a group of people having multiple treatments over a couple of days and also paired with some therapy and yoga and meditation. That's like one common way that people are experiencing ketamine medicine. There's also ketamine therapy clinics where people will go in for an infusion or a nasal spray. I'm not a big fan of those, of that way of working with the medicine, simply because a lot of times there's no therapy that's paired with it. There's no support. There's not a person who's sitting with you who's helping you move through a process that's going to support your nervous system in finding healing. So the infusion clinics would probably be like my lowest advisement of the way to experience ketamine. And then you can also work one-on-one with a practitioner. And you can have scheduled therapy sessions, you can do telehealth sessions or sessions in person in office. So there's many different ways, and if you feel comfortable with one way over the other, and if you have specific questions about that, we can answer those either at the end of this talk, or you can email or call Dr. Roberts in practice, and we'll provide my information at the end, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So many of you might be wondering, like, okay, so I understand maybe what the ketamine is, and maybe what it does and how I take it, but like, how is it going to make me feel? What is that experience going to be like? Well, so everybody's body is different, and people report like a range of different feelings and sensations. But generally, there's a sense of physical relaxation, so the physical body can relax. It can be a really amazing pain reliever, particularly for people that have dealt with chronic pain patterns, because their nervous system, their neurology is actually kind of stuck in a negative feedback loop with that pain signal. And so it can actually help to calm and quiet that throughout the session. And then some of those That reset actually, if you work with ketamine over multiple sessions, can become even permanent. So it's really helped people unwind their chronic pain. It causes a physical relaxation of the muscles, right? So if you have tension in your jaw or in your back or in your shoulders, you just might notice your body relaxes. Some people report feeling a little bit sleepy or like kind of dreamlike, sort of like that state you have, like maybe when you're just waking up or you're getting ready to fall asleep and you haven't quite fallen asleep yet, but you notice that your body is relaxed. Or maybe like if you kept relaxing, you might sleep. It's sort of like hovers like right at that space. And in general, depending on the dose of the ketamine you take, if you take the smaller to moderate doses, you will be very lucid. You'll be able to have a complete conversation. You'll be able to function normally. You'll have your normal motor function. You're not gonna lose the ability to be yourself, right? You're not gonna do something crazy like jump off a building or not be able to go to the bathroom. Nothing weird or scary is gonna happen, particularly at those smaller moderate doses. And at the larger doses, probably not gonna wanna talk. Typically, your therapist or your provider is gonna suggest that maybe you lay down, either on a yoga mat or, in a supported place, and you'll be with an eye mask, maybe listening to some music. And depending on how your body metabolizes the medicine, a ketamine experience is actually pretty short. It's anywhere from 30-35 minutes after administration, so after the lozenge or the injection or the infusion, and it can be from anywhere 30-35 minutes to an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Within 2 hours, most people, the effect of the medicine subside and they're back to their normal state of consciousness. And then for a few hours, or even a few days after, there can be what we call like an afterglow period, where people may feel more relaxed. They may have insights, right, about their emotions or their sensations or things that happen in their body. Because the way ketamine works, I mentioned earlier that it can be a dissociative, meaning that it can help us to separate our physical selves from the sense of our bodies. And that actually has this really interesting effect of sometimes making us more in touch with our body. Because, for instance, if I'm talking to you right now and I say, well, how's your left ankle doing? You probably weren't thinking about your left ankle until I drew your attention to it, unless you had some sort of pain there, right? And so that's, in a way, a form of disassociation, right? If you're ever like, oh, where are my keys? I can't find my keys. It just happened a minute ago. You know they're around there somewhere. Your brain in some way knows where your keys are. You're just not able to access that information. That's a form of disassociation. Right? Disassociation is a normal state. It's a part of a healthy response, and we all experience it every day. But a lot of times we do this because it's a way of self-protecting, right? If there's physical pain or even emotional pain, right? Or chronic stress or painful feelings and memories that have been part of us for a long time, it's actually easier for us to not always be in touch with those things, right? So we feel like we can function and move through our lives. So ketamine as a dissociative medicine can actually help us to safely become in touch with those things so that we can feel them and process them, and with a trained therapist or practitioner, someone like myself or another person who is a guide in the space, can actually help you to move through some of those emotional dynamics and actually release some of the stress and tension around them. And this is why we think that people report greater feelings of peace and calm, reduced stress and anxiety, greater capacity to experience joy, and all sorts of other things. Basically, the ability to experience positive emotions as well as experience negative emotions, but feel resilient, right? Meaning that they can move between one or the other, and they feel safe in that process. So ketamine is an amazing medicine, and I do educate, and I do work with other psychedelics in my practice, some outside the US and some within the US, due to reasons of legality with some of these medicines. So the psilocybin mushrooms, as I mentioned before, there's only certain parts of the United States where it's legal to access therapy and treatment with these tools. And that's also an amazing tool, but because, right, it's not a regulated scheduled substance by the DEA, by the FDA, by the US government, it's harder to access. And so the reason I love ketamine is because it's safe, right? It's a pharmaceutical drug that's manufactured. It has a very long-standing safety record, right? We've been using it since the 50s and 60s, and it's been around for longer than that. And so we know that it's safe, and we know that we can only access it through a licensed prescriber, right? So I love the safety of it. I love the brevity, the short length of the sessions, and how easy it is to even do remotely or virtually. So many of the people I work with this medicine, I work with them over Zoom, right? So the medicine can be sent to them, or they can go to a clinic and access the medicine, and then I can work with them therapeutically on an emotional, psychological level, teaching them tools, right? Like working with their breath, processing their emotions, and understanding how their body works so that they can get the most out of working with that medicine. So we work with a lot of veterans, we work with moms, we work with all sorts of people of all different ages, and ketamine is an amazing and really safe medicine. So the only people you may be asking yourself, well, who might ketamine not be for? Is there anybody that ketamine isn't safe for? So that's a great question. Ketamine is generally very safe. We have very low contraindication. One of the things we notice is that it can elevate blood pressure in certain people. So if you're on blood pressure medication, you have high blood pressure, it's not that you can't use ketamine, it's just that you need to work with your provider to make sure that you're using ketamine safely. So they'll probably do some checking of your blood pressure with the administration of your medicine. But in general, it's safe to take with other pharmaceutical medicines, with other psychiatric medications. So it's very, very safe. And so I see we have Dr. Roberts who has come back, and so maybe now is a great time, a great space for some questions.
Sure, I'd like to open it to the audience and see if anybody has anything they need to know. Yes.
What's the long-term effect of it?
So what is the long-term effect of doing this type of therapy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll give two answers to that, right? What could be some of the long-term positive therapeutic outcomes? And we'll also talk about, are there any safety considerations using long-term? So on the therapeutic outcome, part of the reason that I think ketamine is an amazing medicine is because it really can be used what I call episodically. So this is not a medication that we're looking to like replace your SSRI with or replace your sleep medication with. This is really a medicine that we're looking to use in a targeted way, maybe a series of sessions over weeks or months, and then we pause. Because the way that I like to explain it is that it's sort of it's like introducing something new, right? So imagine you have a fishbowl, right? And you have fish and you have all sorts of things inside. Imagine we introduce some food color dye in, right? Even if you only do that a few times, it's gonna change the water, right? And so really what ketamine can do is it can open up those critical learning windows in the brain. It can actually help to be a hard system reset. So long term, if used properly, you can actually hold on to a lot of those therapeutic benefits without having to keep tweaking the medicine, because it's something that actually creates a change within you, but really it's actually helping to turn on those natural healing mechanisms that your body has to reset itself. Now, long-term ketamine use, and there are people who are regular and daily users of ketamine, and I don't think that that's healthy, at least for extended periods. Some people are using the lozenge, the oral doses, right? There's services where you can go online, do a telemedicine appointment, and then have your prescription mailed to you. And there are people who are abusing this medicine just like any other medicine. And long-term side effects of that can actually include damage to your renal system, damage to your kidneys. So if you're a person that has kidney or bladder issues, that would be another thing to talk about with your practitioner to make sure you're using ketamine safely. But that's not really the way that ketamine is designed to be used. So that's not a problem for most patients if they're working with this medicine under supervision of a licensed or trained provider. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so might I add that the immediate effects can be life-changing. And so, as Lauren was saying, this is not a medicine that you'll take frequently. You want to metabolize it. You want to allow it to work and allow your system to shift in its beliefs. You're actually able to grow new neural connections, new synapses. So your brain becomes more plastic, we call it. And it has nothing to do with plastic, but in this sense, plastic means it's able to change. And so most people suffer because they're in a rut, because they have a belief system that keeps them unhappy and they don't know why. And this uncovers the reason, it lets the demons out, and the long-term effect can be much better mental health. Would you agree?
100%. I love the way that you put that. And neuroplasticity, right? It's kind of a buzzword right now. It's this sort of fascinating concept. You know that phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, or I'm just like this, or I have to be like this, or this is in my genes. Everything that modern medical science is telling us is that that's not true. That our physical health, that our emotional health are all a reflection of the choices that we make every day. And so I think that's incredibly empowering, because you can have been suffering with a condition or certain types of symptoms for a really long time, and you can actually decide to make new choices, and you can bring a tool in like ketamine that induces this neuroplastic state, this flexible state, sort of makes your brain like Play-Doh, like that you can stretch and expand and take in new concepts, right? And it does allow you to learn and allow you to grow. So I think that's amazing.
Okay, any more questions? Yes.
My son took ketamine for 4 months and he was on top of the world. He's had physical pain for 27 years and has 3 back surgeries, and everything else got out of alignment and more damage from the back surgery, so he legitimately was in pain. And when he took it from a company called Mind Bloom, and I think the doctor might have been in Alaska, saw him over Zoom, and my son was on top of the world. He was doing Facebook posts all the time. He was showing himself at the gym on the treadmill and shooting baskets, and he's an artist, and he was prolific. He's been prolific for many years with constant commissions waiting for him and a full-time job, and he was so happy with his life before, and then extra, like obviously there was the pain and the limitation from that, but then he was doing a lot with ketamine, but then it went very sour. And then for the past 7 months, and he had a therapist through the Mind Bloom program that he was on, but then it went very sour, and for the last 7 months he's been psychotic, delusional. It's extremely hard. He's paranoid. He thinks everybody's looking at him and talking about him or after him, or things through the phone. And he did say that he was taking LSD too, and mushrooms sometimes with it.
On his own.
And on his own. And again, he wasn't taking it in the doctor's office. It was sent by the mail. So it was incredible for 4 months, but for 7 months, he's in Pennsylvania, I'm here in Florida. And his life has been hell. Thus my life has been hell, because when he says he doesn't have food, he means he doesn't have food. He tells me he's starving, he's hurting, he's thinks people are watching him. He hates everything in his life, everything, and can't take he can't take care of himself.
Okay,
And I've flown and been with him several times.
Can I break in here?
Pardon me?
That's a very unfortunate
Yeah.
story.
No.
And one of the things that we try to do is to screen people for psychotic tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are much less likely to benefit, or might benefit for a time and then go, go off the deep end.
Yes. Is there a chance that he can go back to normal again?
There's always, as long as you're alive, there's a chance. So, but it should not be done remotely, and it should not be done with psychedelics. But I would, if he were my patient, I would start from scratch and go through everything that he's doing. So,
I love
you know,
everything.
there are multiple reasons why these things happen. So, Lauren, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm so sorry that your family is going through this. And this is a really great question, and I'm so glad you asked this because, as I said at the beginning, no treatment or therapy is perfectly safe for everyone all of the time, right? Like, I think that part of the challenge or part of the problem with what we call our pharmaceutical model is like the way that pharmaceutical drugs are manufactured is it's this very unique compound that's supposed to act mostly the same in a wide range of people. Psychedelics are kind of the opposite of that paradigm in that it might be a specific molecule or substance, especially if they're a synthetic substance like ketamine, but some of these organic substances like the psilocybin that comes from mushrooms, you may have heard of something called ayahuasca, it comes from the Amazonian jungle, right? There's other tools. And these things can actually be really variable and they can act very differently in different people's bodies. But here's what I know to be true. Without assessing your son, right, I can't diagnose him, I can't say he is psychotic or having psychosis, and you can describe him that way to me. What I can hear from that and understand is that when people are mixing and using multiple substances, particularly when they're not under proper supervision, so even though he was working with Mindloom, which some people do have great results, and I would say 40% of my practice is virtual work, and I have fantastic results. But the practitioner that a person is working with has to have all the information to be able to help. They have to be able to know what else somebody might be taking, and sometimes when we combine other substances, first of all, they're not regulated. We don't know what they are, what he's getting. So that's the first thing, right? Sometimes there is actual poisoning. They can have certain substances that are not what we think they are. There's actually synthetic, for instance, psilocybin compounds that are inducing psychosis in a lot of people because they're not actually that natural substance. It's something different that their brains are not meant to handle. So that's one piece. Another piece is that when people go into what may appear to be a psychotic episode, we have to kind of walk the story back. We have to look at, okay, why is this person seeking out these substances? So obviously having the pain that your son is experiencing is deeply traumatic, right? Pain in a young person for 27 years, like, oh my God, that's horrendous. No wonder he's probably feeling the need to want to escape his body, and I'm sure he was feeling so much joy and being able to be more functional, you know, so to have some of that feel like it's taken away, I can't imagine how hard that is to watch as a parent. What I will say is that I would be really curious to work with a practitioner to understand what is the root of all of that, because sometimes when psychotic episodes do happen, or when people experience just anxiety, depression, it sounds like your son's experiencing a lot of paranoia and a lot of depression and anxiety, that could actually be part of the therapeutic process, because when we open up the neurological system, we kind of open up the psyche. If there is repressed trauma, painful memories, whether it's physical or psychological trauma that can have happened, sometimes when we open a person up to feeling and to experiencing things in their body, all of a sudden those uncomfortable feelings come back, and then it can be gripping. And so if you're not working with a practitioner, and your son might be a more delicate case that may need more direct supervision and more support on many levels, you know, people can kind of get into what seems like a rut or a detour, but if worked with properly, can actually be an invitation to healing. So I don't want this to scare people, because yeah, some people are contraindicated if you have a family history of schizophrenia, if the person has a history of psychotic episodes, then we do want to exercise caution. I will also say I've worked with a person who had 2 diagnosed psychotic breaks that came from specific traumatic events, and I worked very successfully with her, actually with psilocybin microdosing. She was an Oregon State resident, to help her move through and come off of I just say to the audience, this is not everybody's experience.
Yes, that's
Oh, go ahead.
very sad, and I'm sorry, and this is not the usual outcome, clearly, or we wouldn't be talking about it here. So, we should talk later.
Yeah.
Okay, yes,
Hi, first of all, thank you. This is being explained so clearly, so I really appreciate the articulation and explanation. And, yeah, I'm a spiritual healer and I work with a lot of people, and I know there's some people I'm thinking of that would benefit from this. And so I'm wondering how we get in touch with this, and then how much, say, if somebody wanted to try an initial ketamine experience guided with a professional like you know, how much is that? That's
so can I answer that? Of course.
Yeah, yeah, you can talk about our retreat.
Yeah, we have a couple of cards over
Oh,
there.
you do, okay.
One is Best Medicine, which is my medical practice. The other is called Transformational Medicine, which is my psychedelic practice.
Okay, good.
Either one will get you to the same
Oh,
person.
that's wonderful. I wanna
Just
say
agree.
just one thing, if I could.
Uh-huh.
Just, it was very interesting that way back when I was like 24 and living in Santa Cruz, California, I was in the Eureka Institute, so I went with some friends down to visit Jack Downing down at Big Sur, and there were a whole bunch of us, and he brought out a tray of the ketamine. And I was doing a fast, so I chose to just watch or witness and meditate, and everybody else went on this journey. And it was like they took the shot, they laid down, they were gone maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and when they came back, everybody had like an experience of God consciousness and beauty and happiness and joy. So, you know, it's so nice to hear about this today in more detail. Thank you.
So you said the magic word for me, which is spiritual.
Spiritual, yes.
These should be not a clinical experience, but a spiritual experience.
Yes.
And that takes a lot of preparation and a lot of care. I prefer to administer the medicine in the person's home, because presumably that's where they feel safest, and then they don't have to travel afterwards, and you know. So if it's a one-on-one, it's going to cost $1,000 for the experience, but I will do up to 3 individuals at a time, so it becomes more affordable. So if you've got, you know, a spouse or 2 kids or 2 friends who want to do it with you, and you all chip in, then you'll all have this experience and you can process together. Lauren is available for processing purposes. So I'm just the doctor. I'm not a therapist. I don't pretend to be. But I do have certification as a shaman. So as the shaman, I create the safe space. And we do that kind of together. So thank you for bringing that up. And it should be that sort of heart-opening, you know, mind-blowing experience.
Yeah, alignment with our soul.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
What are Lauren's fees?
What are your fees, Lauren?
So first thing I'll just say we have a group retreat that is going to be the first weekend in August in Naples, Florida. So it will be like a group experience where you would be able to come and have multiple sessions with the medicine, yoga, food, and accommodation included. And I think we priced that one at around $3,000 a person, and that includes everything. We'll share the information with all of you, like about that retreat. So that is one way to experience the ketamine. There's a group setting, but you'll also have individual support. You'll have access to me afterwards. So that can be a great way to actually have multiple treatments within a short period. And really, I think that's an amazing way to have a neurological reset and also just to connect more deeply with yourself. So that would be one option. So that would be like a mini retreat. And the location is TBD. We'll share that, but it'll be in the Naples area. So
Make
a
sure
bit of
you
a drive
sign
maybe for some of you.
the roster and put your email and we'll send out the details.
So if somebody was to consult you, for a one-on-one session over Zoom? What is the cost of that?
So that's the other way that I work with people. So I also have individual retreats that I run out of Mexico. So if you're open to traveling, I do one-on-one intensive there, and I can share more information about that. And then my virtual work, basically the way that it's structured is it's kind of a bundle of sessions, because I don't just do a single session and serve the medicine. There's preparatory work that we have to do. You have to make sure you're a safe candidate, make sure everything's working with your physical health, help you kind of mentally and emotionally and spiritually prepare. And then we'll have a series of sessions, usually 1 to 3 medicine-assisted sessions, and then what we call integration, and so some support sessions afterwards. And so all of that is handled over Zoom, and you would be able to access the ketamine medicine through a joint basically venture with Dr. Roberts and I, because she will do a telemedicine session with you and then help you access a prescription, which would be like a lozenge. And so you would have access to the lozenges, and then I would support you through the whole process. And so for those, I charge $27.95, and that includes all of those sessions. We'll probably work together over a period of weeks. I can share more of this information with you. We do have alternate payment options, because obviously our work is not covered under insurance. So we have many ways to make this accessible for people wherever you're coming from. So if you want more information, we'll share my email, my website, and we can also share, I have PDFs with more information for all of this that I can send to Dr. Roberts' office, and she can make sure, her assistant can make sure that that's circulated to all of you.
And did she say $27.95
Yes.
for her services?
Yes, and that includes all the preparation sessions, the medicine-assisted sessions, and then the integration afterward.
Yes. Would you mind, what are your credentials, your background?
Who?
Not you, no, not Dr. Roberts, Lauren.
Yeah, me. So my background before I moved into working with psychedelic medicines, I'm a nutritional therapist and an epigenetic scientist. So for the first part of my career, I was helping people use food and natural supplementation to heal their bodies. And kind of what moved me into psychedelics was I was seeing a lot of people struggle with chronic conditions. So like they were having pain, or they were having like repeated gut issues, and just like a lot of stuff going on, and seemingly like mystery symptoms that didn't all connect. And so what I started to understand is that there was a psychological and a psycho-spiritual piece, that for every physical symptom, there was also an emotional component and a spiritual component. And I realized that I wasn't really able to help them to achieve their goals without like addressing those pieces underneath. And so at that time, I was also training with different practitioners. I was back and forth to different parts of Central America. I was also doing MAPS-based training, which, if you're familiar with that organization, is the governing body for working with MDMA as an assisted therapy tool. And so I was sort of doing all these things like to the side of my professional work. And then I did a master's in spiritual counseling, which is like a pastoral counseling program. And so that's when I decided, really just a little bit before COVID, to transition my practice to psychedelic therapy full time. So my practice right now looks like I train other practitioners, so psychiatric nurse practitioners, internal medicine doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, kind of in my methodology, which is what I call the container method, which is really about understanding that psychedelics are not magic pills. They are opportunities. And they work well as part of a procedure when you pair them with somatic healing and release therapy. So if you see my website, I've done a lot of different study and mentorship. I've worked with Pierre Levine's Institute with Somatic Experiencing. My work is heavily grounded in internal family systems theory, or IFS, which is the work of Dr. Dick Schwartz. And so it's really like a combination of different modalities, which can integrate breath and talk therapy and inner child work, and really just are about helping to create more of a connection between your mind and your conscious experience and what's happening in your body. And I use different psychedelic tools, ketamine therapy in the United States, and then also psilocybin assisted therapy. And those are the tools that I use to help people achieve these kind of deeper healing results. But it really is a whole process. And so that's, I'm a scientist, but I also have you know, a lot of training with indigenous communities that come from Central America, so the Mayan community who've been working with psilocybin mushrooms for millennia. So I kind of try to bridge the gap between the spiritual and the scientific approaches and working with
Very impressive.
So when you're doing on the edge kind of work, you have to couple together your education.
She
You
looks so
have to
young.
She is, but
She is.
she is, but she's
Very impressive.
very impressive.
Yeah.
Can I tell, her aunt's best friend was Carolyn Mace.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah,
wow.
Carolyn is she's like an auntie to me. I remember my aunt passed a few years ago. She and I were really close, and she used to take me to Carolyn's Beeman workshop. So I actually am a trained archetypal consultant. So I work with a lot of Jungian archetypes in my work, and Carolyn's work on medical intuition also informs like a lot of what I do, because there's this massive connection, right, between body and spirit. And even before he passed, Dr. Norm Shealy, who worked with Carolyn, was a mentor of mine too. So I've just been really blessed to be connected to some incredible people. And you know, healing can take many forms, right? And like you said, it's about, I think, having a broad base of education so you can support people with the tools that they need. I'm always learning new things, mostly from the people that I work with, actually. My
Could
clients
you
usually
tell
support.
everyone your
Website.
website?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we can share, maybe, I don't know how you're sharing this on Facebook, maybe in a post or maybe in a mass email. We'll share all the links so that everybody can just click them, but my name, Lauren Rice, so it's just www.laurenricewellness.com. My last name is spelled Rice, like the food, R-I-C-E, so it's just LAURENRICE. And you guys can reach me at info@laurenricewellness.com. That'll give you my office email. And you can find me on social media at Lauren Rice Wellness. And like I said, I'll share with Dr. Roberts' office some PDFs and talk more about my in-depth retreats in Mexico, where I do work with other psychedelics. So I work with psilocybin mushrooms and also MDMA therapy, which is an incredible tool, but we can't work with that in the United States yet. Maybe the FDA will help us out in a couple months, we'll see. And then ketamine therapy in the United States. So you'll have access to all that information and how to find me. And even if you're not sure that you want this tool, you just want to have questions, I always offer a 30-minute complimentary Zoom consultation, so you can book space on my calendar and fill out a brief intake form, and I can just help you figure out what path might be right for you, even if it's not me.
How many hours in a day are there where you live?
yeah.
Must be more
Not
than mine.
enough.
Not enough.
Not enough.
All right, so do we have any more burning questions in the audience?
Just that
Well, what
if
place-
Naples is successful, maybe we could come to Sarasota.
Well, maybe you can come to Naples and make it successful.
Well, I can't, I'm gonna be on a cruise.
It's not that.
But maybe next time, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we do. That's why we offer the virtual, right? Because I have many people who can't travel, right? They've got kids, work schedules, cost, whatever. We
Right.
totally get it. And so Dr. Roberts and I are working on a solution to help that be virtual for people that we think are good candidates for that. And you know, we're open, like Dr. Roberts will do those intensives for 1 to 3 people. You know, we're open to creating them if there's interest. So if this is something you're interested in, the best thing to do, get in touch with us and let us know what you're interested in, and we'll help you figure out a way to access that medicine that makes sense for you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've done it, and thank you for your time and your articulateness.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yes, it's been a
Thank
great
you.
pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
I'll
By the
be
way,
in
which
touch.
place in Mexico? Sorry, I wanted
Tulum, she's in Tulum, which is not far from Cancun,
to. Okay.
right? Right.
Yes, very close. Very close. And
Where are
even
you
now-
now? You said you're at altitude, where are you now?
I'm in Lake Tahoe right now.
Oh,
So I'm not in Mexico, so I'm on the west coast for 4th of July.
So that wasn't coca tea
with
that you were drinking?
No, actually this is cacao. But Yeah.
Cacao, not cocoa.
Yeah, yeah, they're coming from where I was, oh my gosh, it's like a lot for me, cause I was at sea level, yesterday, so.
Yeah, we get
Here
it.
we are.
All right, sweetie, well, thank you again, and we'll be in touch, and see if there is any unanswered issues here. So, talk to you
Okay, I'll
soon.
send everything to Sabrina so you can forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.